Good afternoon. On behalf of Chairwoman Maggie McIntosh of the House Appropriations Committee, we welcome everyone to the virtual bill hearing for today, February 9th, 2022. This afternoon, we have 8 bills which the committee will hear. First, we will hear House Bill 456, Delegate Valentina Smith, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program State Supplement. Sponsor panel is joining her is Ms. Kaylee Schmitz with the Maryland Center of Economic Poverty, Jim Campbell with AARP, Sydney Daigle with Prince George's County Food Equity Council, Mary Simmons with Montgomery County Food Council, and J.D. Robinson with the Maryland Hunger Solutions. We ask that all witnesses please stay within a 2-minute time frame. Delegate Valentina Smith, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the Appropriations Committee. Today, I'm introducing House Bill 456 to address food insecurity for our most vulnerable seniors by suggesting that we increase our state supplement to the SNAP program. In 2016, those of you that were here will remember with Chair McIntosh and Delegate Learman and many of us, we prioritized the need to provide a state-funded supplement to ensure that there was a state minimum benefit for anyone 62 years of age or older, and that it would be no less than $30 a month. At that time, it was an increasing of the then federal minimum of $15 a month to $30 a month. Before you today, 6 years later, I'm here to propose, and many of us that you'll see on the panel, that as a state, we respond to the significant economic changes over the last 6 years and the lessons we've learned about food insecurity for so many of our older constituents who live on fixed incomes. We know from what we did in 2016 that the state supplement STAP is a way to help alleviate hunger, improve the well-being of our older population. Adequate nutrition is crucial to maintaining good and physical mental health, especially as we age. The governor, to his credit, has included in the budget a state supplement increase to bring the minimum to $40 a month. We did not know that at the time of the drafting of this bill. The governor's office estimates that there are currently 27,000 older adults over the age of 62 who would qualify to receive his proposed increase to $40 a month. And the DBM testimony that you have in your packet confirms that the governor's office intends that the $40 not be a one-time increase, but that it continue in future budget forecasts. So today, through House Bill 456, we're here to advocate a little punch to that proposal. And we're here to increase raising the minimum benefit to $45 and lowering the qualifying age from 62 to 60. The current federal benefit now, minimum benefit, is $20. In 2016, it was $15 and we doubled it. So I think it's only fair that now we consider increasing it to $45, which is just slightly over $1 a day for those seniors who would qualify for the minimum benefit. And it's also time that we consider lowering it from the age 62 to 60 so that we capture the maximum number of older adults who are facing insecurity. The 2023 budget preview that we've all seen here in the Appropriations Committee confirms that pre-pandemic levels of economic stability have not been restored for thousands of Maryland families, especially our most vulnerable. I spoke to the department yesterday, and they believe that changing the age from 62 to 60 would result in an additional 4,000 seniors being eligible. Not a lot, but certainly for those 4,000, $45 a month would be significant. Just a reminder, to qualify for SNAP, you have to be earning an income at or less than 165% of the federal poverty level. That's the highest threshold that one can come in order to qualify for SNAP. For a household of one, that's a monthly income of $1,771 or less. And for a household of two, that's $2,396 of less. So for our older adults on Social Security or a fixed pension, many of them sit near or at that qualifying line and are in need of our assistance. I just want to remind everyone, since 2020, we have not had to contribute state money because the federal COVID relief for food insecurity provided everybody with no less than $250 a month. So essentially, from what we predicted, we have not spent $5.7 million that we thought we would have been spending on the state supplemental food benefit over the last 2 years. In terms of economic impact, it's very clear, and you'll see from the testimony, that Maryland has the 8th highest rate of food insecurity, and that food prices are going to continue to increase 5%. For any of you that have been to the grocery store, you know this is significant. I turned to a lady the other day in Wegmans and said, oh my gosh, I don't know how people are doing it. These prices are so high, and they're expected to continue to increase. Based on a report from the National Grocers Association, the impact of SNAP in Maryland generates $117 million in the grocery industry and related industries. And SNAP purchases, although they're not subject to sales tax, certainly when our consumers are in the store, for every dollar that they get in SNAP, they're spending $1.80 in economic activity in the grocery stores. A 2020 study done by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities found that SNAP benefits are one of the fastest impacts on the economy because the money is so quickly injected back into the economy. 80% of SNAP benefits are redeemed within 2 weeks of receipt, and 97% are spent within 1 month. So the state supplemental money circles right back around immediately into our economy. And for every dollar that we afford these seniors in our proposal, allows them a little bit of extra money to spend on their shelter or their transportation. I think it's fair, and our committee has realized that it's time that we ensure the realization of food as an essential right for those 60 and older in our state who are receiving just the minimum federal benefit, and that we add a little bit to that. You've got a long day. You have a long list of supporters. If you'll take a look at them all, I would appreciate it. You'll also see that Congressman Trone thought it was so important that he sent letters in to the leadership in our committee. So along with the advocates, the retailers, and those that believe in the economy, I respectfully request that we take what the governor did and we add to it with $5 more, $45 a month, and we lower the age to 60, and we do what we can for our most vulnerable seniors. I respectfully request that we move favorable on this going forward. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you very much, Delegate Valentina Smith. With you this afternoon, you have a panel.
I do, and I think they've got the order in which they want to go. If they want to start out, Mr. Johnson is kind of coordinating that panel. It's hard when I can't really see all the holiday squares here.
So yeah, I believe I'm supposed to be going first. My name is Callie Shumitz. I'm with the Maryland Center on Economic Policy, and we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan research and a research organization, and we believe all Marylanders should be able to achieve our full potential in a healthy economy that offers a widely shared and rising standard of living. So thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, for allowing me to speak today, and thank you to Delegate Valentino Smith for introducing this legislation. We are here in support for all of the great reasons that Delegate Valentino Smith just outlined. She touched on a lot of the economic benefits, so I will try not to repeat her too much. I think one thing that we see, even though things are starting to get a little bit better in terms of recovery from the pandemic, that there is still an enormous need for food assistance. In particular, the number of people enrolled in SNAP has not really gone down. Looking at some of the census has been doing these biweekly surveys on kind of the urgent needs that people are experiencing throughout the pandemic. And the most recent still showed that almost 300,000 adults in Maryland did not have enough food to eat sometime in the last week. So it's very concerning. And I think we need to continue to make sure we're addressing that. You know, we've all started to notice that food prices are rising. So I think that's another reason that's appropriate to increase the benefit. And you know, we know there's lots of research that shows SNAP works. In addition to the kind of the immediate relief that SNAP provides in the form of food assistance, the evidence shows that that translates into long-term improvements in the lives of the people who receive it. Particularly, you know, improves health, leads to fewer doctor visits. People are less likely to exhibit psychological distress. And those are all things that when we're talking about the senior population are particularly important considerations. And as Delegate Valentina Smith mentioned, it also has significant benefit for local businesses. Research shows that for every $5 the state invests in new SNAP benefits generates about $9 in economic activity for participating grocery stores and farmers markets. So by raising the minimum benefit to $45 and expanding eligibility, this will help foster healthier communities and boost the economy. So we would ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Jim Campbell. As a reminder, if we could limit our time frame to 2 minutes for testimony.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. My name is Jim Campbell, State President of ARP Maryland, and former member of the House of Delegates, actually. And I'm really honored to be here. When I was in the House, I served on the Ways and Means Committee, but it's an honor to be in front of Appropriations. ARP, as you know, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan nationwide organization that strengthens commitments and dedicated to improving the lives of those 60 and over, older citizens. SNAP is one of the most effective programs, anti-hunger programs we have. It serves 1 in 7 U.S. residents and helps ensure that low-income households have access to adequate food and people do not go hungry. In Maryland, 870 Marylanders receive SNAP benefits and 90,000 of them are over 60. So I know how important your time is as a former member, and I don't want to take up more time. And I just want to make a couple real quick points here. As has been mentioned, a recent study by the Food and Action Research Center noted that Maryland has the 8th highest food insecurity rate among people 60 and over, and the 7th highest among those 50 to 59. SNAP program has been shown to be effective in reducing this food insecurity among older adults. But I think what some of the most advantages I've noticed are that researchers have found, and this is researchers at Johns Hopkins School of Nursing, have found that participation in SNAP by older adults increases their chances of living independently. They're less likely to be hospitalized and less likely to enter a nursing home. It is estimated that taxpayers can save millions in healthcare expenditures by continuing to expand programs like SNAP that provide a lot of benefits at a relatively inexpensive cost. So I know your time's valuable. I know it's a busy day. I want to thank you for your time and hope you can support the bill. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Next, we have Sydney Daigle.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Sydney Daigle, and I'm the director of the Prince George's County Food Equity Council. We're a local food policy council for the county. I'm going to speak a little bit to the needs that we heard from older adults during the pandemic in our county as far as food security goes, and also to some of the unique benefits we see from SNAP and meeting those needs. During the pandemic, our Food Policy Council was really instrumental in coordinating the food assistance response. We stood up a comprehensive database of food assistance resources for residents early on in the pandemic and started coordinating a network of food assistance providers. As a result of that work, we started hearing really for the first time in a large volume from residents firsthand that were looking for food. We heard from children and older adults that were looking for food assistance for their parents for the first time in their lives. And we heard from older adults themselves that were weighing the time, gas costs, and health risk of driving out to a food distribution in the county where food might or might not run out when they got there. We also heard from our food assistance provider partners or food pantries that they knew older adults in their community needed support, but that they didn't have the resources or capacity to home deliver food. The effort to reach seniors in our county who were food insecure was really Herculean, but it fell short for a few reasons. We know that meals didn't reach all the seniors that needed them, and they still don't. Certainly, they weren't reaching them in the quantity that they needed. We also knew that meals were not always nutritionally what seniors were looking for their diets. And finally, we knew that the meals and food that they received were not always culturally relevant. And that's why SNAP is such a powerful tool in fighting food insecurity amongst older adults. It provides choice. So older adults can provide for themselves the foods that they need. They can buy foods that are that suit medically tailored meals. They can buy foods that fit into their cultural foodways. From 2019 to 2021, we saw a 31% increase in the number of seniors participating in SNAP in our county. That means that more people are getting the food that they need, and it also shows that increasing SNAP allotments makes a difference in participation rates. We believe that now is the time to make investments in the state supplement so we can ensure that we're as prepared as possible to support seniors across our state when other pandemic supports end. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mary Simons.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am one of those seniors. During the pandemic, I was able to make a more healthier choice, even in 2 emergency retina surgeries. And we wouldn't have to depend on the senior boxes that come that are unhealthy, preserved foods that you wouldn't even eat, but you send them because that's what the food bank and USDA allows them to buy. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for respect. You earned my vote. I put you so you could respect me. I challenge each and every one of you to live on $1 a day. See how it feels. Come back and let me know. I'll even send you a box of the senior food that they give us. My rent went up $104 because I didn't have doctor bills last year. And now I've got to juggle to see how I'm going to pay my rent. So thanks for that little money. I appreciate it. But it isn't enough and you know it. I'd also like to thank the chairman, Chairwoman McIntosh, and Vice Chairman Chang for allowing me this time. But sometimes you need to hear it from the source. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Simons, for your personal testimony. Appreciate you being here. Next, we'll hear from J.D. Robinson, Maryland Hunger Solutions.
Good afternoon, Vice Chairman Chang and members of the House Appropriations Committee. Thank you all for lending us the opportunity to speak today. My name is J.D. Robinson. I'm the Anti-Hunger Program Associate for SNAP at Maryland Hunger Solutions. We are a statewide, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to end hunger and improve the nutrition, health, and well-being of all Marylanders through outreach and advocacy. For over 10 years, we have assisted anyone in Maryland seeking food assistance through applying for SNAP and connecting them to local resources such as food pantries. Through this work, we know that older adults like Mary are not solely having trouble putting food on the table. They are juggling paying for medicine, transportation, utility bills, you name it. The last thing that they should worry about is what they're going to eat or when they're going to eat. With food costs climbing 7% over the past 2 years and forecasts predicting continued historical increases, the potential ending of the federal public health emergency and with it, the boosted SNAP emergency allotments and the record number of people accessing SNAP across the state, raising the minimum benefit for older adults will alleviate some of that incoming burden. You've heard from Delegate Valentino Smith and some of our partners today on the impact they will have in Maryland. SNAP is a proven economic driver. It boosts the nutrition of older adults, and 20 organizations from across the state have signed on in support of this legislation, including Meals on Wheels, the Maryland Retailers Association, both the Maryland and Capital Area food banks, and multiple other community-based groups. We thank Congressman David Trone, who has signed on in support as well. In responding to the pandemic, our federal and state government acted swiftly to ensure that SNAP recipients receive that maximum benefit allotment available for their household. And only the federal government has the resources to address food insecurity on the scale that we have seen during this pandemic. Today, we respectfully ask that this committee consider this supplement, which is a modest amendment to an existing Maryland program, because it will be beneficial to low-income older adults for years well beyond the pandemic. A commitment was made 6 years ago to provide a helping hand to older adults in Maryland, and it's time to do it again. Thank you for your consideration. Maryland Hunger Solutions urges the favorable report on House Bill 456.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robinson. We also have listed on the witness list, Ms. Scott with the Maryland Legal Aid. Ms. Scott is here. If not, at this time, we'll take questions from members of the Appropriations Committee. No questions from the Appropriations Committee. That ends the bill hearing for House Bill 456. Thank you very much, Delegate Valentino Smith. We'll move on now to House Bill 345. Delegate Derek Barnes, Baltimore City and Prince George's County Grant Funding, Violence Prevention, and Community Service. Delegate Barnes, please proceed when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Chang, members of the House Appropriation Committee. Once again, my name is Delegate Darrell Barnes for the record, here to present on House Bill 345. House Bill 345 essentially we're asking for appropriated dollars for Baltimore City and Prince George's County to help them in the midst of this time of crime prevention. Crime is high in those two respective areas. And there do I say, if we can get that under control, not only does it help Prince George's County and Baltimore City, but I think it's better for the state of Maryland. The bill as amended includes nonprofits whose mission includes teaching financial literacy, entrepreneurship, workforce development. And by partnering with nonprofits, it helps our youth, young adults, and those with barriers to employment reach their full potential through early employment experiences and professional development by providing the tools and skills needed to prepare individuals for jobs and knowledge to create their own source of income. Listen, I think it's important that all of us understands the need of supporting our state's attorneys. This would be just another tool in the toolbox and helping them do all that they can to bring crime down, to help our nonprofits that's providing the necessary resources and training to our young people. And this only helps. The grant will go to nonprofits whose mission is to train individuals in their workforce and entrepreneurial and financial literacy space. With that, you will hear from my panel that will be more in depth in what we're trying to get accomplished. And for these reasons, I ask for a favorable vote.
Thank you very much, Delegate Barnes, for your presentation of the bill. This afternoon, we have several witnesses who are in support of the bill. Reminder to all the witnesses, if they could please limit their testimony to 2 minutes. First, we have the Prince George's County State's Attorney, Ms. Aisha Bravoy, and also joining her will be Ramon Jackson. So, Madam State's Attorney, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Chang and members of the committee. For the record, I'm State's Attorney Aisha Bravoy. First, let me say thank you so much to Delegate Barnes, who happens to be my delegate, for introducing this very important legislation. I'm here today to testify in strong support of House Bill 345. This bill, of course, would require the governor to annually appropriate $500,000 to Prince George's County State's Attorney and the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office for the purposes of establishing a grant to be earmarked for violence prevention and other community initiatives. Passage of this bill is critically important because we are facing unprecedented violent times in our community. Since 2019, violence has increased 21.3% in Prince George's County, in very critical categories like murder, which is up 83.8%, and carjackings, which is up 323%. And so what we really need to do is focus on strengthening collaborative efforts with those organizations that can really fill the needs of these young people who are committing the majority of these offenses. In 2021, my office launched the Our Streets, Our Future initiative in response to the increase in gun violence here in Prince George's County. The initiative was designed to partner with stakeholders, advocates, business leaders, and law enforcement agencies as a problem-solving approach to intervention. And what we recognize is that our nonprofits have really stepped up, but we have not provided them the level of capacity so that they can provide the level of services that we need throughout our community. In state's attorney's offices, because we are also considered problem-solving offices, we are in the best position to direct those resources to the agencies and the nonprofits who are serving our community so well. And so we would really appreciate your support as we continue to try to drive down crime in our community. Today, you'll hear from a number of our community-based partners, most of which have been serving us without any resources that we are providing. And we really need, again, to increase their capacity so that they can provide greater and more programs in our community. So thank you so very much. And I hope that you will support the passage of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam State's Attorney. And we also listed Ramon Jackson from your office.
I don't think there's a Ramon Jackson in my office.
Or,
So I apologize. Good afternoon. I'm not part of the state's attorney's office. I'm just a person, volunteer who is testifying.
okay, would you like to provide testimony?
Sure.
All right, 2 minutes.
Yes, sir. To you, Vice Chair, and the honorable members of the House Appropriations Committee, as well as the honorable state's attorney that just spoke. My name is Ramon Jackson, the founder of and director of the One Love Life Center. We specifically deal with young people and providing them resources to better their mental health and then to provide opportunities for mentorship. Partnering with entities such as the State's Attorney's Office of Prince George's County is critical and necessary. Providing funds such as those that would be provided by SB 345 would allow initiatives like the Our Streets, Our Future program that she just talked about that would assist in providing ample opportunities to the necessary means of critical and fundamental resources that would help the young people specifically avoid the pipelines to jail and or prison. These type of funding pockets aid families who benefit from resources like this that would avoid the hurt, the grief, the despair, and the death due to violence that plagues our streets in our county. And so it is so important that these pockets of money be available to foundations and to county entities like the State's Attorney's Office so that we can avoid young people ending up in the places that we don't want to see them, being prosecuted for crimes such as even the car deaths that are happening in our county right now. This would give them ample opportunities to be assisted to have the necessary resources and opportunities that would help them to curb that crime spree. So I appreciate you and your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Next, we'll hear from Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office, Mr. Yusuf Ahmad.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, it's good to see you again. Members of the committee, my name is Yusuf Ahmad. I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office in support of House Bill 35, which would allow our office to provide funding for programming to nonprofit organizations with the goal of violence prevention and community service initiatives. My team and I oversee the management of our grant funding that we receive primarily through the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Youth Services, as well as the federal government. Those funds primarily cover staffing costs. We would love to be able to offer the community more opportunities to partner with us and apply for this grant funding for the stated initiatives. Our team has successfully applied for, managed, and maintained this level of funding year over year. The long-term planning has been difficult as grant funding by its nature is not a stable funding source for long-term planning. Having this appropriated funding would provide for better planning long-term. We are confident in our office's ability to properly manage this new pot of money and submit to the necessary oversight from GOCYP with the data sharing and reporting requirements listed in the bill. We are already conducting these at a quarterly and annual basis for our existing grants. Some of the community programs that we've been able to start with some grant funding is our Project 17 program, which partners with local schools to provide monthly workshops and resources to help students achieve excellence through academics, reduce truancy, and earn practical work experience. We've been able to partner with our local organizations to provide students with employment opportunities in exchange for improvements in their attendance and academic achievement. Additionally, we've been able to work with local organizations to run a Great Expectations program, which exposes elementary school level students to positive careers in the criminal justice system with the goal of nurturing their potential interest in law enforcement careers, in which we partner with our local PD, the circuit court staff, and district court staff as well. These are some of the types of programs, among others, that we would hope to see the community apply for upon the time to distribute funds. We ask for a favorable report, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmad. At this time, we'll take a question from Delegate Grice.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. We have the Safe Streets program in Baltimore City already, and I believe there's another, at least one or two programs in the city as well, though there's evidence-based community programs that reduces crime. How is this going to be different than any of those other programs that already exist? And also too, I mean, I'm evidence-based as well, and I look at trends, and we're spending more and more money over time for these types of programs, but crime continues to increase. And we're told that it's supposed to go down rather than go up. So can you comment on that as well?
Yeah, let me just say that I think the trends have shown that with the support of our nonprofits, crime has actually gone down. Recidivism has gone down, and the ability to impact the community has gone up. With the additional funds, I think it brings additional resources. And with the additional resources, it only helps the state's attorney's office by impacting and reaching out into the community in ways that they would not ordinarily have. So if you would listen as to the number of nonprofits on this call, they will all tell you about the impact that they're having in touching these young people, diverting them from a life of crime, but doing other positive things, helping them with employment opportunity, financial literacy. All of those things impact and deter one from saying that I want to do something disruptive, but do something more positive. And I think, once again, if you look at the data, it shows that with the impact of our nonprofits reaching out into the community, crime has gone down, employment is going up because of their efforts, businesses are coming in, so it's impacting our economic development. So all of those things are positive. And once again, this is just another tool in a toolbox to help our state's attorney's office.
So is this going to supplement the existing programs, or is this something that's completely different? I'm not trying to, this isn't a gotcha question. I literally don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that this is a supplement. This is something that would be additional to.
So if I could answer, I can only answer from Prince George's County side. Is most of the grants that we get, especially from the governor's office, is for staffing purposes. It's not for the purposes of coordinating with nonprofits in our community. And we believe that this funding is extremely important for state's attorney's offices because, again, we work within the law. And if you think about our young people in particular, the whole system for young people is around rehabilitation. And we are unable to really focus our resources in our offices because most of our offices, the resources we get from local government goes to pay for salaries for members of our office. So grant money that can pay for our coordination outside of the office is absolutely critical. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One, and you'll hear from our partners today, but one of our partners is working with us on a new emerging adult program where we're working with people who are transitioning out of prison, but they're currently in prison. They're transitioning out of prison. They are between the ages of 18 and 24, and they have a lot of promise, but they have a lot of needs. We need to make sure that we have good entry partners for young people because they are more inclined to get back into trouble if they don't transition out properly. And so you'll hear about some of the work that we're doing inside of our prisons to help people come back a little bit more whole. And then we have diversion programs for youth who commit offenses in our community. And again, the juvenile system is based on rehabilitation. And so as state's attorneys, we have an opportunity to really impact young people by providing them with resources right here in their community with people from the community who can assist them in making better decisions. We don't get money, at least in our office, we don't get money to coordinate with nonprofits in our community. The money that we get pays for the salaries of our employees and operating expenses of our offices. So I can only speak for Prince George's County, but this would really be a much needed resource in a community where we're experiencing an increase in crime. So thank you.
Delegate Mangione. Delegate Mangione, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate bringing the bill. And I do have similar concerns with Delegate Rice, but this is not meant as a gotcha question on you. Thanks you, Ms. State's Attorney, for answering that, because I was kind of curious how, or the age groups, I heard it mentioned several times, young people. And my concern, I guess, and maybe you can explain where these resources will be put, because a lot of money that we're investing, obviously, in public education should be helping younger adults, teenagers, et cetera. I mean, billions and billions of dollars. And obviously it's a great, great asset for so many of our young students, but obviously they're slipping through the cracks as well. How does this differentiate from what we're already supposed to be doing with our school system? I mean, I understand the nonprofit aspect of it, and then what you mentioned about some of those that were formerly incarcerated, but I guess, can you explain why this is different than what we're already trying to do with just public education in general, where we're already?
Well, I think that where public education cannot serve every student. I mean, if you think about what you might hear from the educators in our school systems, they're doing their best. Some of them still have overcrowded classrooms. They're dealing with a lot of kids with a lot of different issues, and they have to provide a core education to those students. So if their focus is providing a core education to students, yet there are all of these other factors and issues that young people are dealing with, you can't expect a teacher to be able to take care of all of their needs. Number one. Number two, when you look at what our students are telling us, they said they need more counseling. They need people who they can talk to. They need more structured activities. The schools are not equipped, at least right now, to provide the level of therapy that many of our young people need in order to function. In addition to that, young people live in the context of a family. So even if you are addressing maybe potentially their needs at school, they still have needs at home, like food, like other resources, like stable housing. And so nonprofits really fill in that gap. Where schools cannot be expected to do everything. It's nearly impossible for a school to do everything and for teachers to be expected to do everything. But if they can then coordinate with nonprofit agencies that can supplement what is supposed to be happening at our schools, or at least part of what is happening at our schools, that is critical. So I don't think we can rely on our schools to solve all of the problems of our society. And that's where these nonprofits have stepped up and said, you know what, we're part of this community. We want to be a part of the solution, and we should give them the resources to be a part of that solution.
There's several other witnesses who are signed up from the
Thank you for your
nonprofit community.
I appreciate it.
And they'll be providing more testimony. So we'll take two more questions and then we'll continue with the favorable testimony from community groups. Delegate Metzger.
Thank you, Delegate Barnes, for bringing this bill. Question I have, will this work in conjunction with the mayor's plan?
And I'm not sure what the mayor's plan is.
Well, that was my next question. Could you tell me his plan?
That I don't know what his plan is, but what I would say, once again, and I think State's Attorney Brayboy has already articulated it, that this becomes an additional resource, an additional tool to help with crime prevention in those two respective areas. What I do say is that if you look at the things that you will hear from these nonprofits, they will tell you how they're able to penetrate neighborhoods, provide services that you will not get in our public school system. A lot of these kids come from single parent households, so they're already dealing with social and economic despair. So these kids are looking for attention, they're looking for love, they're looking for someone to be there and guide them. It's almost like what you do, Delegate Messer, as being a pastor, right? You're able to provide a different level of resource than you would by saying, just go to a shrink. So I think if you look at these things individually as merits on their own, this only helps our state's attorney's office to be able to do the job that their office is set to do.
So to be clear, the funding doesn't go to the school, it goes to the nonprofits, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because sending more money to the school is just not working.
That's not the intent of this bill.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. From the Timberville Community Development Corporation, Inc., we have Dr. PJ Edmond. Dr. Edmond, please proceed when you're ready. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And I want to thank also Chair McIntosh and the entire Appropriations Committee, certainly to Delegate Barnes. Thank you for the opportunity. My feelings and association, my comments are wholly in line with Mr. Jackson's testimony. I can't express the need enough. I represent Timberville Community Development Corporation and very invested and involved in workforce development in the areas of mentoring and prevention and intervention. I think all of those elements are key when we're dealing with the areas of violence prevention and just community service as a whole. And so I understand, having worked in Baltimore City and now in Prince George's County, the kinds of challenges that our youth are facing. And these kinds of bills, I think, will help to intervene and to provide the kinds of measures and supports one life at a time that I think will make a difference overall. So in understanding the importance of education, I also want to lend my support to Bill 345, House Bill 345. And I really believe that giving nonprofits the access to do the work that we do well in a regional and an individual way, I think will be absolutely positive for our community. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify and pray that you will, and hope that you will add your support of this House Bill 345 as it has been stated. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edmond. This is a public announcement to everyone out in the public that individuals who are signed up to testify, that staff is keeping the witnesses in the waiting room until the bill number is heard. Also, please make sure that the Zoom name matches the witness name that is signed up for on the witness list. Next, we will hear from P31 Girls, Inc., Tamisha Miles. Tamisha Miles. If you could unmute yourself, Tanisha Anderson.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
Are you representing Tamisha Miles or P31 Girls?
That would be me, yes.
Okay, so for the record, what is your name?
My name is Tanisha Miles Anderson.
Okay.
I'm using another device, but that is me. I'm Tanisha Miles.
Okay, 2 minutes, please pursue when you're ready. Thank you.
Sure. Greetings to you, Vice Chair Chang. I am Tanisha Miles Anderson. I am the founder and president and CEO of P31 Girls Incorporated, located in Prince George's County. I am testifying in favor of HB 0345. I share the sentiments of all of my colleagues that have spoken before me. I believe this is a great opportunity to bridge the gap. I am uniquely positioned because P31 Girls has been working in partnership with State's Attorney Aisha Brayvoy's office in providing diversion and intervention services for our juveniles. In addition to that, we have also partnered with Prince George's County Public Schools. So we're actually in the schools and we're working on the diversion end, which allows us a great opportunity. There is a great need in Prince George's County to service our young people. There is a desperation in the community. Young people are in need of direction, guidance, education, support through mental health services, through academic coaching, in addition to workforce development. And so I am proud to say that we have been able to provide scholarships to these young ladies. We've also been able to provide internships, and we have seen a great response from our community and from the parents and from our partners. Again, I am appreciative of Delegate Barnes for bringing such a bill and drawing attention to the need that we have in our community. And thank you for allowing me to add my voice to such an important bill.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miles, for your testimony. Next, we'll hear testimony from Rhonda Dallas, Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and Chair McIntosh and members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm Rhonda Dallas, CEO and Chief Curator for the Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council, and I am in full support of HB 345. When State's Attorney Brave Boy announced her agency's call to action, Our Streets, Our Future community initiative, the Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council did not hesitate to quickly respond. Crime prevention and sustaining the safety of our residents and visitors requires an all hands on deck approach. And through my experiences leading PGAHC, I know the arts and nonprofit collaborations can play a vital role in the solution. State's Attorney Brave Boy and her team and my team began crafting an outdoor mural program that supports preventing gun violence, vandalism, and tagging while promoting community safety and beautification of Prince George's County neighborhoods. Commissioning one of the most prominent local community artists to assist in this new program, our focus would start at the top priority neighborhoods identified by the State's Attorney's Office and engage youth and young adults in at-risk environments or who are at risk of involvement in illegal activity. Impactful programs such as this, they are proven models across the country, providing measurable outcomes, but essential to their success is sustainable funding. HB 345 will ensure resources to launch such collaborative programs and ensure our streets and our future are secure. So I thank you for this opportunity to speak and favorable consideration to the legislation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dallas, for your testimony. Next, we'll hear testimony from Khalil Denny from the Denny House. Khalil Denny from Denny House. Next, we'll have testimony from Jason Tisdale from Listening is Key LLC.
Really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I have been a service provider and for the last 20 years, and I have been working with Prince George's County, delivering services. So I'm in the trenches, so I have a different point of view. And what I mean by that is that it takes all hands on deck. When I deliver services, it's very critical to have funding in place. There are so many lives that fall in cracks when there's no funding in place. We have a job to make sure that we are investing back in our youth. Education, I've been listening, education is separate. I deliver services from coping, life skills, professional development, showing these young people that there is another chance there, that you're able to get the help that you need. You just need the support. The initiative that Madam State Brave Boy has done has been grateful. I mean, we just had a graduation that was, heartfelt, but the resources have to be there to be able to touch the lives. This emerging adult program, the pilot that we just ran, we need the resources so that we're able to touch more lives. That is very critical too, is making sure that it's consistent. The funding will help consistency so that we are able to reach more lives, be more impactful in the community, all hands on deck. But these resources are being able to be in the right places so these initiatives can continue. Everybody that's on this call has had someone in their lives to help them be the man or woman that they are today. If there wasn't football or athletics or mentors in the community to help me to be the man that I am today, the resources are very critical and important. We have to make sure that we are investing back in our youth in different ways. Education is different from learning how to cope, have strategies to come back in the community after you've been incarcerated. Those programs need to be there so that we're picking these youth up so that they're able to be successful.
Thank you very much.
I don't want to take too long. Thanks again.
I understand. Thank you for your passion.
Yep.
Next, we'll hear Michelle Hare from DXT Therapeutic Service. Michelle Hare from DXT Therapeutic Service.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that Khalil Denny is in the waiting room from the Denny House, just as a FYI. Just wanted to let
Thank you very much, appropriations staff. If we could address that with Khalil Denny and Michelle Hare. If Michelle
Yes.
Hare is here, please
Yes.
proceed.
Hello, my name is Michelle Hare Diggs, and I'm the founder of DXT Foundations. We provide mental health services to the Prince George's County community, regardless of one's ability to pay. We would greatly appreciate funds that would allow us to expand and continue to serve our community in ways that we have been limited due to lack of funds. We use an evidence-based curriculum that allows us to provide a variety of groups that deals with issues that plague our community. We provide individual and family counseling as well, and community support. It is my hope that you will see the benefit of allowing local nonprofits to provide services and continue to do what we do best. So we are in favor of House Bill 345. And we just wanted to thank you for giving us this opportunity to testify. And we're just hoping that you will allow this to happen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Hare. Going back to Khalil Denny from the Denny House.
Yes, thank you, Kalila Denny here.
Thank you. 2 minutes, please.
All right, so I'll make this really short and brief. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to testify today on behalf of House Bill 345. We are in favor of this bill in support of the state's attorney's offices being funded to support nonprofit organizations and the work that we're doing alongside the state's attorney's office. They have had several initiatives in the community for stopping gun violence and other violence in the community, supporting expungement events, community engagement events, providing access to opportunity to the community and those who are in need. Our organization, the Denny House, has been a partner for them, with them in all of these efforts. And if we had more funding to support the work, we could increase our support in those areas that I mentioned. It is very important that the state's attorney's office gets the same support from community organizations like mine as other offices and other agencies throughout Prince George's County are receiving, because they can't do the work alone. They need organizations like the Denny House to help them carry out their goals and initiatives. So I am very much in favor of funding for grants to the organizations that are in support of correcting and limiting gun violence and stopping gun violence in Prince George's County.
Thank you very much, Ms. Denny. Very much appreciate it. And just a reminder again to the public, please have your Zoom name match your name on the witness list so that we can have you properly admitted into the hearing room. Next, we'll have Latasha Ward, the Solid Foundation, Inc.
Hello, greetings. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Latasha Ward. I'm the founder and executive director for the Solid Foundation. I'm definitely in support of HB 345. Growing up in Prince George's County and, witnessing, the violence, growing up at a young age and seeing how drugs and violence destroyed our community, what I did recognize was my friends and family members that had support had a supportive system. They were able to actually make it. A lot of my friends, have had businesses that once sold drugs, that was involved with violence things, but they've been running their business and operating them for over 30 years. What Solid Foundation, is doing, we work with, justice involved or returning citizens to start up a business. So we take them from start to finish, but to do something like that, we definitely need funding to do that. And I definitely want to thank the state's attorney for the initiatives that she's been able to do without the funding. But definitely having the funding will allow us to be able to do greater work. and touching the lives of the children so that they don't, repeat what some of their, parents have done. So
Thank you very
basically
much.
have to give them hope. We
Thank you very
definitely.
much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ward, for your testimony. Next, we have Derek Frenner with Ever Forward LLC.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir. First and foremost, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak on this very important bill. My name is Derek Fenner. I'm a former National Football League player. I'm also the co-founder of Ever Forward LLC. I grew up right here in Prince George's County. Went to Oxon Hill High School, attended the University of North Carolina, and was fortunate enough to get drafted in 1989 by the Seattle Seahawks. I came back to the Prince George's County area for one reason, and that reason was to give back to my community. I was fortunate enough to meet Madam State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy in 2020, talked to her about my goals and what I wanted to do in the community. She mentioned to me that she was working on a program called Emerging Adults, and I just thought that it would be a great opportunity for me to give back to the community. Now, we also work with Mr. Tisdale with Listening is Key, and like he mentioned, we had a graduation ceremony about 2 weeks ago, and it was absolutely phenomenal. To see these young men, when they first came into the program, be very standoffish and, try to be very hard to, seeing them almost in tears at the graduation ceremony was just heartfelt. I mean, I don't think there was a dry eye on the call. I mean, it was truly amazing. So what that says to us is that programming works. And what we truly need is funds to continue the good work that Madam State's Attorney has started through Emerging Adults,
Thank you, Mr.
so
Fenner.
that we can
Thank you very much.
so that we can expand throughout not Prince George's County, but the state of Maryland. So I am for House Bill 0345. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frenner. Next, we'll hear from Philip Lee with the Old Mill Foundation.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, committee members, and my delegate Barnes, Valentino Smith, and Susie Proctor. It's good seeing you all. And I'll try to do this in 2 minutes. I am Phil Lee. I'm the Executive Director for the Community Public Affairs Council, better known throughout Prince George's County as CPAC. When the state's attorney advised me of her intentions to submit the proposal for this legislation, House Bill 345, there was a sigh of relief and a feeling of hope. I thought, finally, there will be an organization of the community-based nonprofits and a process to bring the needed resources to our youth and families that are in various at-risk categories. With the passage of this bill, the state's attorney will be able to address and direct resources and with the means to do so to those in need and with the needed oversight to ensure progress. CPAC has been on the ground in our communities for 20 years. We have forged partnerships with our schools, law enforcement agencies, and most of all, the parents of our youth. Our diversion program is designed to hopefully one day shut down that schoolyard to prison pipeline. With our programs, we have diverted more than 5,000 of our youth away from the fouls of the criminal justice system. We have moved chronic truants from the streets of our communities to the graduation ceremonies of our schools. We have resolved family crises by ways of conflict resolution and worked to develop real working police-community relationships. We have done these things over many years on what some think of as a maybe kind of budget. Many of us use our own household budgets to get this work done. We need your help. The state's attorney, who I must mention was CPAC's general counsel for 15 years, we did pay her $1, knows what uniting organizations with proven track records will accomplish. She knows because she has been a part of the member of the process. Grant her what she needs to continue this work. Grant the state's attorney the passage of this bill so we all can do more for more.
Right.
Vice Chairman, I want to thank you for granting me this time to state a case for the youth and parents of Prince George's County.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. That appears to be all the witnesses who are signed up for this bill. We'll take questions from members of the committee. Delegate Valentina Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I just wanted to take a minute to help Mr. Lee, if he could help me clarify something here. So I'm sorry, Mr. Lee, I'm going to defer to your gray hair as having a little bit maybe more experience than Mr. Fenner, Mr. Tisdale, and some of the others, but I don't want to assume. But the fiscal note on this says that it's $1 million, and I read DBM's statement talk about $1 million, but they don't seem to reflect what the actual savings is to the state going forward. So are you here telling us that you, in your 20 years, have actually seen that spending the money in this way keeps children, young adults, and others out of detention centers?
Delegate, I would say, indeed, I have. When I see young people who once walked the streets, walk across the stage and go on to get jobs, I know that's one less person we'll have to pay for to keep incarcerated. It's one more person that we'll have to help one other person to do the same thing. The savings are just, I can't imagine how far the savings go when we have residents who don't have to worry about people stealing their cars, robbing their homes. Insurance companies, our insurance rates shoot through the roof. So is there savings? Absolutely. And with 5,000 youth that we have had opportunity to work with, I can only imagine how much more we could get done if I didn't have to use my wife's budget to pay for this.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lee. I have seen your program many years ago. I even had the pleasure to have a tour, and I just want to emphasize then, based on your testimony, that the fiscal note is not at all taken into account the significant savings that state will see based on the outcomes that these programs have proven to have. Thanks for helping.
And I like to think of my hair as being silver, Delegate Valentina Smith.
I stand corrected.
Are there any other questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for Delegate Darrell Barnes or the witnesses on House Bill 345? That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 345. We'll now move up to House Bill 385. Delegate Lehman, Maryland Economic Development Corporation Student Housing Requirements, Leases, Health or Safety Emergencies. Delegate Lehman, please pursue when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. For the record, I am Delegate Mary Lehman, asking your favorable report on House Bill 385, requiring Medco student housing leases to increase transparency and to provide leasing policies that mirror University System of Maryland institutions where these residence halls are located. Now, the requirement in this bill pertains specifically to Medco's University System of Maryland housing projects, where students were told they had to continue in their leases in the fall of 2020, although universities had halted in-person learning at that point because of COVID. I believe even Medco and USM officials would concede the situation was handled very poorly. There was a lack of information, there was misinformation, and there was confusion about why students in traditional dorms could cancel their housing leases, but Medco students could not. Also, students at different USM campuses were dealt with very differently. For example, Towson students were eventually released from their leases long before University of Maryland students were. One official with the University System of Maryland, when I brought this up to him, said, quote unquote, "I believe that's because the system is so decentralized that was bound to happen." This, I believe, is unacceptable. So the bill does two things. First, it creates some transparency requirements by Medco, where Medco is referenced. Every time Medco is referenced in the lease, it has to be bolded, and where a management contact for that specific residence hall has to be provided within the lease. Secondly, the bill requires Medco housing projects to have the same public health and safety leasing protocols. So if a public health or safety emergency results in the closure of a university campus for in-person learning, then Medco must abide by the same lease-release protocols as that university. Medco initially, I worked with Medco and they initially agreed to the language in the legislation. They actually provided the leasing transparency language. But last week I was informed that they were going to oppose the bill. They blamed it on a miscommunication. I did make every effort to ensure that the language in this bill and the intent would be amenable and fair, and that could actually be implemented by Medco. So briefly, the bill is needed because we want to avert this kind of situation in the future. And this is all due to this discrepant leasing policy between Medco housing and traditional university housing. And this obviously, as I said, came out during COVID-19. So more than 140 families at College Park and Towson ended up hiring an attorney to help them. Many other families hired their own attorneys. A lot of folks told me this caused great stress and financial hardship. University of Maryland families just learned last fall, finally, that Medco would not pursue unpaid housing costs for the lease period August 2020 to August 2021. In closing, I would just say that resolving this leasing discrepancy would be a major step toward repairing the damage that was caused in relationships for our constituents and Medco and the universities, and in realigning Medco's goal of providing student housing while prioritizing the welfare of students and parents. This is a fair leasing practice that would prevent further controversy, and I think it should be seen as a way to improve the quality, consistency, and fairness of college housing opportunities for all of our constituents. Mr. Chairman, I urge a favorable report.
Thank you very much, Delegate Lehman. First, we have favorable testimony, Sean Shermer. Sean Shermer.
Yes, hi. First, I want to thank you for bringing that bill forward, and thank you for your summary of the bill. The bill is a huge step in the right direction. It's not complete, though. I would argue that the bill is missing as far as the lease goes for the students that live on campus. Well, they all live on campus. For the students that lived in the dorms that the college owns, they only have to sign a lease for fall and for spring, and the summer is separate. For the Medco owned properties, they're required to sign for the whole year. I just wanted to point that out. That had nothing to do with last year, but if you're going to fix it, let's fix the whole problem. But last year, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare for my daughter, and it was a nightmare for the other 120, 30 students. The information that we got was inconsistent. It was inappropriate. There was a complete lack of concern or willingness to work with us. We had to hire a lawyer. They wouldn't work with the lawyer. The whole thing was such a mess. We went round and round. We had to have rallies. We had to get on the news. We posted on Instagram, anything to bring awareness to this, because the University of Maryland was, quite frankly, completely unconcerned about helping us, and Medco could care even less, and Capstone could care even less. So that's hard to believe, because there was a lot of not caring going on. It was very stressful for our children. Medco, Carlo Colella made some comment about, well, the parents will have to pick it up, and we're sharing the cost equitably. Not every student has a parent that can pick up the bill. Students take out student loans too. So this bill really does need to move forward. It is ridiculous that students are not treated the same, no matter what housing. They are on campus. University of Maryland owns that property. They, quote, don't own the building because Medco is running it and they have to pay back Medco. But let's be clear, they own the property. It's University of Maryland housing. It's on their housing page. It should be equitable. If you're going to let the students out of the dorm leases because there's a health emergency, you should also let them out of the Capstone ones.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Next, we'll hear from Scott DePoy, please.
Yes, Scott DePue here of Arnold, Maryland. I'm here to testify in favor of House Bill 0385. My daughter is currently a junior at Towson University. She lived in a Medco dorm as a freshman and would have kept that same dorm room as a sophomore if it weren't for COVID. I really would like to thank Delegate Lehman for introducing this bill today. I also want to thank the other sponsors, many of whom I have become familiar with throughout their help with students and parents throughout 2020. There are many other House members and Senate members as well who advocated for a reasonable resolution to this unprecedented situation in 2020. I'd like to thank all of them. As some of you know, maybe most of you know, this particular issue made it all the way to the speaker's desk. I'd like to thank her as well. But the fact of the matter is, this resolution that eventually came about shouldn't have taken so much effort by so many Maryland leaders. Students and families should not have been used as pawns in negotiations between Maryland's public and quasi-public institutions. I encourage all of you to vote in favor of this bill and urge your colleagues to do the same. Most importantly, this bill reaffirms that during health and safety emergencies, the University System of Maryland institutions will make their own binding decisions about closing campus and the dorms for the well-being of their communities. Medco should also welcome this legislation, although we just heard that they're not in favor of it anymore, because it allows them to focus on their core mission.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boyd. Thank you very much. This time, are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or the favorable testimony? Delegate Valentina Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for the bill sponsor, I just want to clarify. This is a situation that I had happen. In my neighborhood, I kind of live on a loop. It's called Long Ridge Lane. So I had a group of parents and students that were staying in the dorms. And then I had about 15 houses away, my city councilman's sons who were staying in the campus apartments. And the dorm kids got to opt out, but houses away, the same kids at the University of Maryland and the dorm apartments could not opt out. And so your bill is an attempt to address that discrepancy, correct?
That's exactly right, Delegate Valentino Smith, and I think you demonstrated it well, that kids living, in the case of College Park, right next door to one another in buildings that you would not be able to discern, looking at from the outside were any different. And I actually talked to one of your constituents about this, and he said, I knew there was something different, that it wasn't built by the university, but the fact that it was located on the campus was, I thought that, I couldn't even imagine that any issue would ever arise nobody imagined COVID, obviously, but this dad said, I couldn't imagine a situation of any kind that would arise where my kids would have been treated any differently for any reason in terms of their housing arrangements than students in the building right next door. So that's exactly what this is an effort to do, specific to the leasing provisions and more specifically to the ability to get out of a lease in a public health or safety situation. It's very narrowly defined, public health or safety situation in which the university closes for in-person instruction. So this is not like a storm or some other temporary situation, a flood or an electrical outage where a university closes for a day or two. This is where it is closed under a public health or safety emergency, the way it was under COVID, where in-person learning is completely suspended, usually indefinitely.
Thank you. Thank you. I couldn't defend it when we're standing around fire pits in my neighborhood with parents right next to each other. No defending that. Thank you. Thank you for forward.
Delegate Mangione.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, the bill sponsors. Quick question, because I'm really not familiar with Medco. Do residents of all these buildings, the Medco ones, do they have to be students, or could they be individuals outside of taking a full schedule?
No, thank you for the question, Delegate. The residents of these buildings, Medco buildings, are all students. They are physically, I think in all instances, although there is someone from the university system that could tell you otherwise, I believe they are always built, or the ones I'm familiar with are built actually on the footprint of the campus. So to that one dad's point that I spoke with, he said, it's not as if this is off-campus housing. It's right there. And they have ground lease arrangements. Medco has ground lease arrangements with the colleges and universities where they build their buildings. So they're leasing the ground underneath the building, but they finance and build the buildings.
Okay, yeah, so they have no reason to be there other than to take class at a university then.
Exactly right, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next, we'll have testimony favorable with amendments from Robert Page, University System of Maryland.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Chang and members of the Appropriation Committee. My name is Robert Page, and I am Associate Vice Chancellor for Financial Affairs for the University System of Maryland. And I thank you for the opportunity to make a couple of brief high-level points about House Bill 385. The system is submitted written testimony, and I'll do my best to make sure my verbal points complement or add to the written testimony rather than recite what you already have. I've been with the university system since 1989, and I've worked alongside Medco in arriving at the contractual relationships and arrangements supporting public-private partnerships for student housing since 1999. Medco has been a great partner, and in collaboration with Medco, we've added 7,000 beds to 7 universities within the university system at an aggregate cost of about $450 million. That $450 million was debt capacity of the university system that was freed up by doing student housing through these public-private partnerships. The arrangements were designed to produce housing that was distinguished from university-owned housing and was more like housing available to students in the surrounding community. The local communities' student housing markets differ from university to university, which is why, in response to Delegate Lehman's point about the different universities' public-private partnerships.
Please summarize, Mr. Page.
Excuse me?
Please summarize, Mr. Page.
We wholeheartedly support the transparency provisions of HB 385. But we think that the provisions in 10.132 will have a detrimental effect both to the university system and the student housing operations at our universities. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Valentina Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman. I appreciate your being here today, Mr. Page. I just want to emphasize, I mean, this has been a significant problem for a lot of people, but the university got a tremendous amount of COVID relief money and made I guess, a conscious decision not to help relief with the students that were in this unfortunate situation. So we've got to take some policy action if you're going to make those types of decisions, is my impression.
Part of the basis that the bond rating agencies exclude the debt associated with the P3 projects from the university system's credit profile is the independence of the projects from the university. When we start to subsidize the projects or financially support them, then the rating agencies attribute the debt associated with the public-private partnerships to the university system.
Next, we have witness testimony from Tom Sadowski with the Maryland Economic Development Corporation, providing favorable with amendment testimony. Mr. Sadowski.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. For the benefit of the committee, I'm Tom Sadowski. I'm Executive Director of Medco. That is as of August of this past year, 2021. I also, for the record, I want to state that Medco is in favor of this House Bill 385, but with a very critical amendment. We very much appreciated the opportunity to work with Delegate Lehman on the drafting of this bill and actually provided the language that's included in the bill, the truth in leasing or the transparency in leasing component. We found, my staff found that throughout that very difficult pandemic process, there was a great deal of confusion. So we took it upon ourselves to clarify the language, to make sure the students and their families knew who they were getting into business with and where to go with concerns. And there was a lot of repairing of, I guess, the language of our leases to make it more clear, to more transparent, so that there wouldn't be that kind of confusion. We're very adamant of that. So we are very much in favor of that portion of the bill, which clarifies the language that we provided but makes it uniform throughout all of our leases. I have two sons that just graduated from the University of Maryland system institutions this past December. So I very much appreciate the anxiety and that parents and students went through during that time. That's why we made the conscious decision back in the fall not to pursue collections or evictions of any students. It was a tough time. We did provide a lot of relief. We exhausted some reserves in doing so. So we had to ask for some help. We've worked very closely with the institutions since then to make sure that we're addressing these issues. The only portion of the bill that gives us pause is the portion that affords control to the system for the closure of these facilities. Right now, the state of Maryland already possesses the ability to close our housing projects. Back when the various institutions decided to close their institutions at their request, we closed our housing units. So,
Sadowski, if you could please summarize.
Finally, if that was written into law that affords the control to the system, it's going to devastate the system's credit rating and really dismantle the financial terms of our bond structure for each project. So we very much support the legislation, but with the omission of that clause that affords control to the system, because the state, frankly, already has the power to close those units if indeed necessary in the case of very unfortunate situations like we have with COVID. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sadowski. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or for witnesses? Delegate Corman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for Mr. Sadowski. Congratulations on your new position with Medco, and appreciate the tone you're bringing to this and trying to be a little bit more supportive maybe than we saw early on with dealing with the parents. I guess I want to push on this a little bit and understand the bond rating issue, because you have other facilities where it didn't matter what you guys did, you were going to lose a lot of revenue because of COVID. Parking facilities, conference center facilities, they're not your facilities, but stadium facilities had problems. Our tollways had problems. So right. How does putting in language to protect Maryland residents cause more damage than just the fact that in a lot of these sort of bond facilities, there's just a huge loss because of how weird COVID was? I mean, why shouldn't we, acknowledge that and try to protect our residents?
It's a good question. I mean, frankly, I would say that there's already the power that you're pursuing. The state already has the authority to close down our facilities, and we will close them down in the event that the system requests us to do so. We work very closely with them in that regard. The problem occurs when you afford a certain level of control to the system that they don't already possess right now. As Mr. Page had already profiled, that $450 million does not appear on their books right now. If you afford them a certain level of control, next thing you know, the rating agencies are going to associate that control with an indebtedness, and which unravels the financial structure of the deals that we already have in place. It also is going to imperil what the system's been able to do without having to spend the money on building these facilities. They've been able to build other critical facilities, provide new other programs, and continue to afford a very high quality education experience to students while still making it affordable and accessible. We've provided that kind of benefit to the system by incurring that debt ourselves. If you link them to that debt, it's going to severely injure their ability to offer a high-end educational experience and do so at a low cost. So I appreciate what you're trying to do. It's just an unintended consequence. And what I'm saying is we already have the ability to do what you're seeking to do.
Yeah, I'm not seeking to do anything. It's not my bill, but I appreciate that. I mean, oftentimes the rating agencies look through those P3s anyway. I mean, you can go read the S&P rating agency reports on the state of Maryland. They've looked right through the purple line P3 and say that is debt of the state. We are not buying that is the debt of a P3. But I guess my issue is, and I don't have the bill in front of me, is there a way to work on the backstop for the families and the students? I don't care about giving the USM chancellor the power to close down your buildings. I'm talking about if the buildings are closed down, if a tornado hit your building. There was a tornado in College Park about 20 years ago. I remember it well. How are the parents and the students taken care of? That's what I'm interested in, not necessarily who has the power to shut down your building when.
Well, we have certain ability, like we demonstrated first part of the pandemic, to cover certain costs. But these are revenue bonds at the end of the day that covers the debt. And the revenue that's generated by each project is in dire need to support that debt. I mean, if there was some other resource that could be established to address what you're talking about, I mean, maybe that's what we're talking about. But right now, all the revenues that we generate, there are management costs, maintenance fees, there are other services that we have to provide. So it's a very thin margin. And based on the relief that we were able to provide, I mean, right now, I think the current business model, we were in the negative for a lot of those projects over the course of the past year. And we're catching back up. But I appreciate what you're saying, but there's only very, small, I mean, and there's insurance, obviously, for those kinds of situations that you're describing. But look, I'm open to having a broader discussion about the nuances of these bond deals and how to protect the families. We're very interested in their protection and the students' protection as well. But that one clause is very problematic in the bill. And I shared that with Delegate Lehman, and it's just a very complex matter.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate your interest. I didn't get a lot of that interest last year under previous management, so appreciate your engagement. Thank you.
You bet. You're welcome.
Are there any other questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or for the witnesses? To the bill sponsor, thank you so much for presenting this bill. I would encourage you to work with the
Mr. Chairman, there's another witness that did not get called. I did have a point I wanted to make, a counterpoint to something Mr. Page said, but I'd really rather you call on Sean Shermer if you could. She did sign up to speak, and I think I see her. She should be on the witness list, I think.
Yes, Sean Shermer had already provided witness testimony. Sean Shermer?
Yes, I did. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Sean Shermer, for providing testimony earlier, and thank you to the bill sponsor. To the bill sponsor, please reach out to the witnesses and work with them on the specific issues. And then also, as another resource, Delegate Ben Barnes, Chair of the Education and Economic Development Subcommittee, please work with him too, and also iron out the different issues that are involved. So thank you so much. That ends the bill hearing for House Bill 385. And now move on to House Bill 365. Delegate Corman, Public School Construction, Fossil Fuel-Based Energy System Costs, Prohibitions, the Green School Construction Act of 2022. Delegate Corman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, committee colleagues. I come before you today with HB 365, the Green School Construction Act. First, let me acknowledge really everybody on this committee's work on school construction over the years, but of course, particularly Chair McIntosh, Delegate Grice for his work on the NOC Commission, and many others. Obviously, it's a really important issue to this committee, and this bill in particular seems to have engendered some strong feelings. Obviously, it's an important issue. I'll just say, independent of this bill and this committee, there's a transitioning happening in our building industry. We are shifting to a more electrified future and a greener future. I've offered one tool here that I think helps push us in that direction. But there are other options out there, including policy options. I think we'll see bills this legislative session involving incentive approaches, mandate approaches, other concepts. What this bill does is, in some ways, takes a relatively narrow view. As this committee well knows, the Interagency Commission on School Construction looks at eligible costs and offers a match to our school systems for construction costs of eligible costs. So Montgomery County Public Schools can't build a full basketball arena and expect that its 50-50 match is going to be met by the state. It can't build a 30,000 foot classroom and expect it's going to get a 50-50 match from the state. There's a very narrow set of eligible costs. What this bill does is it defines what's an eligible cost for purpose of school energy systems, and basically says if you're upgrading or building a new energy system, it needs to be non-fossil fuel burning in order to receive that match from the state. If the local school district wants to pursue its a fossil fuel burning system, it can do that. It just shouldn't expect state tax dollars and on debt service is state tax dollars to support that effort. And really, to me, when I'm looking at multi-decade investments, which is what these systems are, it doesn't make sense at this point to replace, say, a fuel-fired system with a gas-fired system. It makes sense to go the next step to get to something that's really makes sense for the 21st century and is greener. But appreciate that there's a lot of passion on this, including among some of the proponents, some ideas about how to maybe do this a little bit better. And I think you'll hear some of those ideas from the rest of the panel shortly, but that's the bill. And with that, Mr. Vice Chair, I hope we can hear from some of the other panelists before the interrogation begins.
Thank you very much, Delegate Cormer, for presenting the bill. This afternoon, we have two witnesses who are providing favorable testimony. First, we have Joseph Jakuda with the Climate Parents of Prince George's County. And if you could please provide a testimony within 2-minute time frame. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Vice Chair Chang and members of the committee for allowing me to speak on this important matter. My name is Joseph Jakuda, and I'm a proud parent of a 7- and a 3-year-old and the lead volunteer on the Climate Parents of Prince George's County. Firstly, the science tells us that in order to stave off a grim climate future for them, their friends, and their friends they have not yet met, we must stop emitting greenhouse gases by 2050, and people blessed as we are in Maryland need to do so sooner. Over the past year, we participated on a committee with elected officials, other advocates, students, and staff of Prince George's County Public Schools to write a climate action plan for PGCPS. We've learned a great deal from this work. First and foremost is about the age of boilers. Boilers used for heating are the primary fossil fuel burning equipment in any building, and about half of PGCPS's boilers are 20 years old or older. Proposed legislation in the General Assembly marks 2045 as the end date for emissions in Maryland. If designs are coming to the IAC now for new boilers, that means there's a 50% chance that they will need to be scrapped before the end of their useful life, and this is not a good use of taxpayer dollars. And that doesn't even get into the extra cost to reconfigure buildings to work with a different heating system. We've also learned from the committee that solutions are ready and economical. PGCPS is building 6 alternatively financed schools right now. 5 of them will be built emissions-free heating systems, namely geothermal. The reason is that when they do the 30-year-old total cost of operations for IAC, the numbers just make sense to go fossil fuel free. And it's not just the alternatively financed schools. They've built 8 schools of all sizes and even retrofitted 2 elementary schools with geothermal. And there is the fact that boilers also produce air pollutant that worsens our children's asthma and harm their learning abilities, and that alternatives are also available for water heaters and cooking equipment. We're at an inflection point when it comes to our future investments. Will we make good investments, knowing what the scientists say, or we make unwise ones? We implore you to enact this important legislation for our children's sake. Please recommend a favorable report on this important legislation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jakuda. Next, we have Diana Younts with the MLC Climate Justice Wing.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chang and committee members for letting me speak on this. I'm Diana Younts, co-chair of the Climate Justice Wing, which is a statewide coalition of grassroots organizations. The Maryland Commission on Climate Change has recommended that all buildings in Maryland reduce their greenhouse gas emissions 100% by 2045. And Maryland's 1,400 schools must be part of the solution. The commission has also projected that gas delivery rates will increase more than 2 to 5 times than what they currently are by 2045, making it all the more important for schools to get off gas. In the long term, school districts that continue to invest in gas systems will be burdened with vastly increased energy operating costs, or be faced with replacing those boilers before the end of their lifespans. And schools so far in doing their life cycle cost analysis have not adequately accounted for those escalating gas prices. Third, the lowest fruit here is that at a minimum, new schools and adequately designed existing schools should not receive state funds for installation of gas-fired boilers. New energy efficient all-electric schools have comparable construction costs as conventional schools, as has been demonstrated by the 2 net zero schools in Baltimore City. And those schools also will reap the financial benefit of lower operating costs for decades. On the Eastern Shore, where they are already facing high oil and propane costs, some districts are planning net zero ready schools now. Fourth, and this is speaking personally, I've been fighting for smart climate policy for several years. With the birth of my incredibly jolly and happy grandson, who has not yet chosen his preferred pronouns.
Ms. Yount,
The
if you
need
could-
for smart policy is
Ms.
all
Yount,
the
if you could
more.
please summarize.
Yes, the
Thank you.
need for smart climate policy is all the more pressing and waiting personally for me. I implore you to give a favorable report for HB 365. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yount, for your testimony. Next, we have three individuals who are providing favorable with amendments testimony. First, Benjamin Roush with FSI Engineers. Benjamin Roush. 2
Yes.
minutes.
Hello. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Mr. Roush. 2 minutes. Provide your testimony.
Great. Thank you. So I'm an engineer by trade. I love this bill. I want to deal with some of the things that you might hear for reasons you can't do this. So specifically, electrified buildings. This is already a thing. They work down. Heat pumps work well down to very low temperatures. Something our industry solved the better part of 10 years ago. So it's eminently possible to do this in new schools. In existing schools, I do have a friendly amendment that we consider how to properly fund gas changeovers to all electric systems. That is a moderately expensive proposition in existing schools only. Speaking of cost, for new schools, they do not cost more to build. In many cases, we actually have new schools coming out as less cost, new schools and many other projects coming out as less cost because you get to omit the cost of bringing in a gas service. So it is true that heat pumps cost slightly more, incrementally more, but overall the cost is substantially less. Last one I want to handle is grid focused, that our grid could not handle such a thing as all electric building electrification. There's a PEPCO report I address in my letter of testimony, and I strongly encourage you to go read that. It does all these points better than I can do in 2 minutes. But the grid can and will handle all building electrification and all transportation with a very modest growth per year from now to 2050. Most estimates are between 1.4 and 1.7% per year growth. Not a hard target. Thank you for your time. I love this bill. I hope that you pass it, and please do see my friendly amendments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roush. Next, we'll hear from Lisa Ferretto.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Vice Chair Chang and members of the committee for the opportunity to provide testimony, and thank you, Delegate Corman, for introducing this important Green Construction School Act. I'm a sustainability architect and a member of both the AIA, American Institute of Architects, as well as the U.S. Green Building Council. I'm a representative of the Large Firm Sustainable Roundtable, and we collaborate with large firms across the country to lead the way to carbon neutrality. I've been on the Maryland Green Building Council, and I'm currently on the Baltimore City Commission on Sustainability. This act prohibits the use of state funds for fossil fuel-based energy systems, and this move, as we've heard, is imperative for AIA's carbon commitment and for Maryland's own goal of reaching zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2045. Transition in schools from fossil fuels, as Ben said, can be done in new schools at no additional cost. And any of these future amendments to accommodate existing schools with a life cycle analysis will just ensure that Maryland is spending their state dollars wisely. For any path of electrification, zero fossil fuels to be successful, we also need to build energy efficient buildings. So I hope there also may be some amendments to include energy conservation targets, which will save the schools operating cost, and we know in the construction industry today, that's a really hot topic, cost, especially for schools. As a sustainability architect and advocate, I look forward to the passing of this bill to ensure Maryland is accountable and responsible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ferretto. Next, we have Ms. Brianna January from Maryland Association of Counties.
Hi, good afternoon, esteemed committee members. Brianna January here representing the Maryland Association of Counties to testify in favor of HB 365 with amendments. Counties share the goal of HB 365 to pursue more environmentally sound school facilities. And as you've heard today, many already take measures to utilize renewable sources in school construction. However, we do have several concerns with the bill as written that could be addressed with amendments. There are many situations in which local jurisdictions may need to use fossil fuel-based energy systems at no fault of their own. These could include the ongoing disruptions to the supply chain, for example, and scarcity of materials, as well as various geographical issues that make it virtually impossible to use certain renewable sources. Additionally, as the previous witness alluded to, it would not be a reasonable policy or fiscally sound for counties to convert aging school facilities to renewable systems within the life cycle of those facilities that are ending. Unfortunately, HB 365 as written does not take these measures into consideration. And under the bill, counties would unfairly have to pay the full cost of system procurement and maintenance. This, to be frank, puts county governments, which value both exercising fiscal responsibility with taxpayer money and being stewards of the environment, in a precarious situation. But amendments here could offer a solution. An amendment to HB 365, for example, to require the state to include additional financial support in the baseline square footage share of our funding formulas would help counties meet this increased capital and operational costs associated with renewable systems. And it would fairly split the fiscal burden on pursuing such projects. And additionally, counties would welcome an amendment to provide a waiver for projects, as I alluded to, that cannot practically support renewable energy systems because of geographic constraints, et cetera. So counties stand ready to work with the state to develop flexible, environmentally sound school facilities, but do have some concerns with the bill as drafted. And so for these reasons, MACO urges a favorable report with amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. January. Next, we will hear unfavorable testimony from Mr. Jeffrey Guido with the Baltimore DC Trades Council.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and committee members. I'm Jeff Guido with the Baltimore DC Metro Building Trades Council, and we oppose House Bill 365. Currently, the solar and wind energy industry does not provide the same family-sustaining wages and benefits comparable to employment in the nuclear, fuel oil, fuel gas, and coal industry. Our members are certified and skilled craftspersons in these industries, and they install these systems safely and economically. Maryland's renewable energy in the form of hydroelectric, solar, wind, and biomass only provides 11% of Maryland's energy use, because 75% of that is imported. Nuclear energy and natural gas provide 79%, with 41% and 38% respectively, and coal accounts for 9%. Solar and wind have not reached a capacity to replace these reliable on-demand energy. By implementing legislation that would deny school construction for the use of these fuels is paramount to shutting down Maryland's school construction program. A draconian approach to force the use of renewables that have yet to be built for the effective use in our day-to-day lives. And we ask for an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guido. Next, we have joining us this afternoon is Mr. Robert Gorel with the Interagency Commission on School Construction, who is providing information.
Thank you. Yes, I don't speak for or against. A couple of points have been made, but 90% of our schools right now depend on fossil fuel. They're connected, even some of the ground source heat pumps in areas where there's not good conductance in the connection between the heat pumps and the ground. They require fossil fuel to supplement for heat, for instance, and cooling towers to help with the discharge of heat from the building with the ground source heat pumps. The problem that we see is that all of the systems that are ground source, and there are many of them that work, we totally think net zero is the right thing to do, and it supports total cost of ownership reduction, both the first cost and the ongoing cost to own, so that they're affordable and the facilities can be kept in good condition, therefore being educationally sufficient. All of the systems that we have now require connection to the grid for nighttime use, particularly PV. There are some wind systems, but I'm not aware of any schools that have reached net zero that are able to operate without at least a PV type system. We don't have a way to store energy inexpensively at this point on site. So we're having to draw from the grid. 50% of that is fossil fuel driven. And if we convert it to electricity before we send it, we lose another 50% in lost BTUs that could be direct into the building. So therefore, we've actually increased the burning. Unless there are renewables to replace that, we've increased the burning of natural gas in order to make our current system operate. The problem is the source of the electricity. We also know that we can't ignore the cost of owning and operating the system. And the boiler, as I think we heard earlier, there's boilers in use now. We've got many of them way past their life. They are repairable. They work. Not the same with ground source heat pump equipment. It doesn't have the same lifespan. They're typically 20 years compared to 30 years for a boiler, and you make boilers last longer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here and providing the information. Very much appreciate it. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or for the witnesses? Delegate Kittleman.
Thank you. The gentleman who spoke before mentioned nuclear energy, and it sounded like it was lumped with fossil fuel as opposed to clean energy, and I'd just like to get a clarification.
I included nuclear energy as a non-renewable because even though it is carbon-free in the energy it produces, the uranium and the fuel rods are spent when they produce that energy. And that's why it was included in that. And I got that information from msa.maryland.gov.
Let me just ask the sponsor of the bill, Delegate Corman, would nuclear energy satisfy the bill?
Thank you for the question, Delegate Kittleman. I think, under Maryland law, we don't consider nuclear a renewable. So, if we're going to have a school be net zero, which is not necessarily what this bill does, and its source is nuclear, I'm not sure how we would consider that, to be honest with you. And of course, if we were talking about a sort of a fuel pump equivalent, if we were talking about a small modular nuclear, the tech's not quite there for that yet. So we got a ways to go on that. But I know that's a broader issue that our colleagues in the Economic Matters Committee are constantly dealing with, whether or not to consider nuclear a renewable under Maryland law.
Thank you.
Delegate Beitzel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Corman, on your bill, are you saying specifically that this applies only to those heating systems or air conditioning systems in the school, that the schools are being built or changed, and not interpreting this to mean that you can't use fossil fuels to provide the electricity that might be needed to run these systems?
Right. So if it was an electric system, this doesn't necessarily dictate that you would be ensuring that what is generating that electricity is from a renewable source. Now, obviously, over time, the source of the electricity is getting cleaner in Maryland, thanks to some other parallel policies. But this, I don't interpret the bill as saying, for example, that the school system needs to enter like a power purchase agreement with a solar farm to provide the source of the electricity, if that's what you're getting at.
Right. And if you said like you had geothermal systems, it would take electricity to run pumps and that sort of thing to make them run. You're not saying that the electricity that is needed to make them operate is exclusive of anything that's provided by fossil fuel.
Right. Now, under existing, Maryland law, by 2030, 50% of that will be, renewable, at least as defined by the Renewable Portfolio Standard. And, I suspect, spoiler alert, we might go beyond that, in future legislative sessions.
Well, obviously, renewable systems, you're not going to have a heating system in the schools or in renovated schools that are going to be supplied specifically by solar or wind on site, or maybe even in farms or things that would provide all the fuels necessary to run these systems. What other types of alternative systems do you have in mind, or do you think is available independent of gas boilers and other fossil fuel based systems?
Sure. I mean, we actually already have some. There's a few already in the state, and big thank you to the Interagency Commission on School Construction and Mr. Gorella for providing an inventory of that, something they could do because of some work the NOC Commission asked them to do on an inventory. So there are other systems out there. And as you know, you heard from the Prince George's County witness a few minutes ago, and as you probably know what's going on in Howard County out in Delegate Kittleman's way, there are already schools putting in alternative technologies. So I'm not going to invent anything here on the committee with you, Delegate Beitzel. These technologies are out there and available, although I admit in some cases they might have a different upfront or ongoing cost than the sort of traditional systems that have been put in for 100 years.
Another aspect of your bill is that if the counties or jurisdictions do not put in systems that comply to provisions of your bill, that if they don't do that, they don't get funding for their improvement projects and this sort of thing. Is there anything you would be agreeable to if the counties did what you want done in the bill, but it costs them more for the systems than what the systems that they can get cheaper and put into their schools or into their improvements, that they would get the additional funding for that?
Yeah, so just a couple points of clarification, which I know you know, Delegate, but just for the benefit of the broader group. First of all, that is the bill. It's not mandating anybody to do anything. It's just talking about what the eligible match is. And it's the eligible match for that portion of the cost. So it's not saying that there's $0 for, let's say, the new high school in Allegheny County as a result of not putting in a green energy system. It's just saying the cost of the energy system will not be an eligible cost for purposes of the match. But I'm certainly open to alternative sort of avenues, including the incentive approach, which I think is kind of what you're describing, providing more for doing these types of things. This bill, proposes one model of getting there, but as I said up front of my testimony, there's the mandate model, there's the incentive model, there's different ways to get to the same goal.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Christ.
Turn on my camera too here. Sorry about that. Thank you. So I know that there's a huge phobia toward like natural gas and that sort of thing in Maryland. But simply put, I mean, does this bill basically just ban like pipes, with either natural gas or oil or some sort of storage for propane or oil? Is it just basically prohibit that altogether?
No.
Or does it go beyond that?
No, it doesn't prohibit anything. So that's
well, I mean, all right.
Correct reading of the bill.
Fair enough. All right. So in order for a school system to be able to take advantage of all their state funding, that's the prohibition that I'm talking about. Because Delegate Beitzel was asking you the question of whether or not the source of electricity comes into play or not. It sounds like it does not, because there's no way of knowing when that electricity is going into that school where it's being sourced from. It's impossible to know. So I guess what this bill is trying to accomplish is the fact that we just don't want any oil, we don't want any natural gas on the property. Is that, in essence, is that what we're trying to accomplish here?
So, I mean, no surprise, I'm not going to just say yes or no to your framing of this. I think when we are investing state dollars, state taxpayer dollars, which is what the GO bonds ultimately turn out to be, or gambling dollars, or however you want to frame it. When we're talking about multi-decade investments, I would like those investments to be ones that I want to last for multiple decades. And I no longer think it makes sense, personally, for us to be subsidizing technology that we're, frankly, in most cases, trying to phase out. Just as if someone needed phone service, I would not recommend we run a copper line to their house. I think I would probably want to subsidize the cell phone tower and the wireless phone. That's where the technology is going. So this is a way of saying that in terms of the state participation, we're looking for a more forward-thinking.
Well, I mean, I don't want to get into a philosophical debate.
I'm not, sorry, Delegate, just to finish answering your question. Right. This bill does not propose ripping out any existing lines and saying you can't do this anymore, you can't have this, it doesn't ban anything. I suspect natural gas is powering the lights above my head right now. So I don't have that phobia to natural gas personally that you were describing.
All right, so I guess as a follow-up, another question, not even as a follow-up. As far as the state match coming into play here, what if a school system wants to go with more of a conventional heating system that does use fossil fuel? Does the rest of the project, will the state pay for their portion of the rest of the project, or will will the state only not fund that particular phase of the construction project?
It's the latter, Delegate. Just as you know, I mean, you know this very well from your work on school construction issues. If Caroline County wants to build a classroom that's 1 foot bigger than the state standards, that 1 foot is not an eligible cost, but the previous feet are, right? It's the same thing here. So the rest of the building, as long as it's an eligible cost, and Mr. Gorell can, explain, what's eligible and what's not to us, all of that would have the match. I think it's something like 90% in Caroline County, 88% now in Caroline County. It's just the energy system that would not be eligible for that match.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that every phase of construction, as far as the eligible cost, I thought a majority of the cost was sort of lumped in, and the other parts of eligible costs had to do with equipment fixtures and that sort of thing. I don't know if could Bob actually answer that question for us, at least his interpretation of the bill, Mr. Chairman. That's my last question. Thank you.
Mr. Coral.
Yes, Mr. Chair. This could affect 15 to 25% on a new or major renovation project. The HVAC systems are a major cost to a new or renovation. So 15 to 25% could be ineligible.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor, for any witnesses for this bill? That ends the bill hearing for House Bill 365. We will now move on to House Bill 443, Delegate Rosenberg, Maryland Corps Program Revisions. Delegate Rosenberg, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill deals with the Maryland Corps and is, I think, to elaborate upon the bill title, major revisions to an important program. This has been a stepchild. It's within the Governor's Office of Volunteerism. The bill would create it as a separate entity. I'm sure everyone here has read about the Civilian Conservation Corps under Franklin Roosevelt as part of the New Deal. There was language in provision in the Build Back Better bill that would have significantly expanded this program, this kind of opportunity that benefits both participants, because the focus here would be on people who are going to schools with poor matriculation or poor graduation rates, people who are going to HBCUs, people who are going to trade schools, youth disconnected from school or work, to give them their first job for many of these people, but a job that will have broader benefit for Maryland as a whole, creating a Chesapeake Conservation Corps, a Civilian Conservation Corps, historic trade corporations. This is a major bill. This is a cross file, and the Senate sponsor is Senator Ferguson, President Ferguson, who himself is a graduate of Teach for America and has built upon that experience. There will be witnesses after me who can speak specifically to the merits of the bill. I believe that this committee in the budget bill has tried to get the current administration to be more vigorous, shall we say, in its use of the existing meager amount of federal funds for work for the existing Maryland Corps. That has proven not to be successful. So this bill would mandate, I believe, $5 million in the first fiscal year, that it would take effect up to, over a period of time, $20 million. So this is a significant commitment of state dollars and resources to have a significant benefit for both the individuals who would be participating in the Maryland Corps, as well as from the state and our residents who would benefit from the work that would be done by the Corps participants. So I think this committee historically has been very supportive of Maryland Corps. This is a major evolution of the Corps and would urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Rosenberg, for presenting the bill this afternoon. We have two witnesses who are supporting the bill. First, we have Ms. Casey Wetzel, who is Vice President of Outreach and Education at the Chesapeake Bay Trust. Ms. Wetzel, if you could please proceed, 2 minutes. Thank you.
Hi.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Casey Wetzel, and I am the Vice President of Outreach and Education at the Chesapeake Bay Trust. I appreciate your time today. The Trust is a nonprofit that was created by the General Assembly, so you all, in 1985, as a way to supplement or complement the work of state agencies by enhancing community-based reach. The Trust is supported by the sale of the Bay Plate, as well as the Chesapeake and Endangered Species Tax Checkoff that was also both created by the Assembly. So since you have my written comments, I'll be very brief. This bill will expand opportunities for corps of various types, including one that the Trust manages right now, which is the Chesapeake Conservation Corps. And the Chesapeake Conservation Corps was the vision of Senate President Miller and was established in statute in 2010. The program places 35 to 40 young adults for a stipend-supported year of service across the state at numerous nonprofit organizations and agencies. The members that participate, the young adults that participate in the program, work on projects in agriculture, K through 12 education, energy, watershed restoration, and infrastructure. And so the program has been incredibly successful. We have had 300 alumni at this point and have increased the capacity of over 125 nonprofits and served tens of thousands of Marylanders. And we're really happy to report average every year we have between 25 and 30% higher rate of the young adults. So the nonprofits and host sites hire these young adults full-time at the end of their term of service at that rate. And finally, we have demand from young adults that are 3 times what we're able to accommodate, and twice as many host sites want to be mentors and host sites for the year than we are able to accommodate. So obviously, the expansion of the program would be welcomed by many, and this serves tens of thousands of Marylanders a year in work of the Corps and the host site. So the Trust is honored to administer this program and would be honored to expand it if given the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wetzel. Thank you for everything that you all do over there. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Nigel Ray Garcia, who is with the Baltimore Corps.
Thank you so much, committee members, for listening to my favorable testimony on House Bill 443. My first experience working for a nonprofit organization was as an organizer for the New York Public Interest Research Group. Being a recent college graduate, I didn't have the professional maturity or the guidance to figure out that I was actually in the right industry and the right field. I spent years, 16 years after that, working in financial services, the marketing industry, program coordination for a medical training program here in the state. It wasn't until I started my role in nonprofit at Baltimore Corps 5 years ago that I realized what was missing. Connection to community, being surrounded by passionate, like-minded people who want to work on solutions. I feel like Maryland Corps Bill 443 solved this issue for our young program participants. They provide wraparound services to meet our youth where they are, so our youth can really focus on this meaningful experience. Also, Maryland Corps will provide competitive pay for our youth so they can fully understand that this is a viable career opportunity, not only their civic duty, but their responsibility to serve their community and make a career out of it. Thank you so much for listening to this testimony.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the committee for the bill sponsor or the witnesses? Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for being here. That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 443. We will now move on to House Bill 455, Delegate Wells, State Personnel Implicit Bias Awareness Training Required. Delegate Wells, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am Delegate Melissa Wells. And I'm here today to testify on HB 455, which would require all state employees to undergo implicit bias awareness training in order to move towards a more equal and just government. But before I move on, I would like to just make note of a letter this committee has received from the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, who under this legislation would be the coordinating organization for this training. And my office and I have spoken with the Commission on Civil Rights, and we appreciate their support of this concept, and we understand their budgetary and personnel challenges in implementing this is a crucial piece of the legislation. So I am happy and will continue to work with them as well as this committee to make this important legislation a reality. But just to kind of get a little bit more into the bill. So we know that in wake of the Me Too movement, This body passed legislation to require state employees to undergo sexual harassment training. And we saw that there was a problem with normalizing harassment in the workplace, and we worked to mitigate that problem. And now, as we collectively focus on racial inequality in the workplace and beyond, we owe it to future generations of state employees to require similar training, and one that emphasizes the damaging repercussions of racial bias. We know everyone has racial bias, or has implicit bias, excuse me. However, it is clear that some have a much stronger internal bias to the point that they may be a danger to others. And we think that anyone with a strong recognizable bias against any particular group may not have the best interest of that group at heart. So it is a role of state employees to serve and look out for the interests of all Marylanders. And I think that we can agree in this position that there is no place for bias and discrimination. It is with this that I ask this committee to continue working with me and the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights to find a way to forward this legislation and a favorable report on HB 455. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Wells. We have favorable testimony from Cecilia Plant with the Maryland Legislative Coalition.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Chang and members of the committee. Thank you for hearing my testimony today on HB 455. My name is Cecilia Plant, and I am the co-chair of the Maryland Legislative Coalition. We are a statewide coalition of citizen activists with over 30,000 members across the state. And I am testifying in strong favor of HB 455. I just want to start by saying that we all have biases. Often those biases have relatively benign results. For example, research shows that most people are biased towards people who have a nice face and against people who don't. We apply positive qualities to nice looking people, and we apply negative qualities to people whose looks don't appeal to us. In many cases, this might result in a nice looking person getting a better seat at a restaurant or getting some small break, something that doesn't really change lives. However, I don't think any one of us wants to be the ugliest person in a courtroom waiting to be sentenced. That's when bias becomes important. There are occupations where biases, even seemingly innocuous biases, but more importantly, larger biases regarding race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, etc., can have much more profound outcomes. For these occupations, it's important for people who have those jobs to understand their biases and ensure that they do not allow them to have negative effects. This bill will require employees of all executive, judicial, and legislative branches of the state government, as well as independent personnel systems, to take 2 hours of in-person or virtual interactive training on awareness of implicit bias within 6 months of initial appointment, and then once a year. Our members feel that this is an important training, and we strongly support the bill, and we hope that you will vote favorably for HB 455. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear testimony from Natasha Darkeeg with the Maryland Office of the Public Defender.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and members of the committee. I also say special thank you to Delegate Wells for introduction of this bill. I am Natasha Darkeeg, and I currently serve as the Deputy District Public Defender for Baltimore City. And as a state employee, I've been serving the citizens of Baltimore for the past 26 plus years. And I truly emphasize that the implementation of a statewide implicit bias training is extremely important, especially among state personnel. Such a bill would increase the awareness of that bias does in fact exist, but also assist employees in taking steps to reduce the likelihood that these biases would affect or impact decision-making in any way. As we've seen across the nation and throughout the state of Maryland, that there has been a tremendous outcry against racist incidents, not only in the community, but in the workplace. Leaders are continuing to strive to make places of business more diverse, equitable, and inclusive. Implicit bias training plays an important and major role in this. And training not only raises awareness about the mental shortcuts that exist that affect our decision making and often lead to snap judgments, but these snap judgments are based on race and gender. And often this is about a person's talent or character. The goal is to reduce bias in attitudes and behaviors in the workplace. And that not only goes from hiring and promotion decisions, but also it goes to interactions with customers, clients, and colleagues. House Bill 455 seeks to legislate an effective implicit bias training, and that it is going to do more than raise awareness. It is the hope that it will have an impact in teaching employees how to manage their biases and change behaviors. These trainings should be done, as it indicates in the bill, at the outset of employment, and
Thank
also
you very much,
continue
Ms.
throughout
Ms.
employment.
Arcade. Thank you.
Thank you for
very
your
much.
time and attention. I ask that you return a favorable report.
Great, thank you. Next, we have favorable testimony from Jeremy Lamaster, Free State Justice.
Hello, committee. Thank you for the invitation today to speak on behalf of this bill. My name is Jeremy Lamaster. My pronouns are he and they, and I'm the executive director at Free State Justice. Free State Justice is formerly known as Equality Maryland and the Free State Legal Project, and we're a 30-year-old nonprofit dedicated to serving lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer Marylanders. We work to provide direct client legal services and conduct policy advocacy. And it's with our efforts that we hope that anyone can live with safety and dignity in all spaces of their lives. And that is why we're here today to urge a favorable report on this implicit and unconscious bias training in order to ensure that LGBTQ+ Marylanders are receiving the best state support. Despite significant advances in recent years, our community continues to face discrimination, harassment, and violence at rates above state and national averages. In our own needs assessment conducted in 2016, over 50% of our trans respondents detailed adjusting their daily routine in order to minimize social interactions that would include bias. Nationally, almost a quarter of LGBTQ+ people report avoiding social situations out of fear of discrimination, and 12% avoiding public as well. Beyond the violence, there's significant issues in accessing state-administered services. Most specifically, we had a housing homelessness focus group this past fall. And one of the more harrowing stories that stood out to me was a survivor of domestic violence. She was escaping her home, sought refuge at a housing shelter here in Baltimore, and was denied service because she is trans. Instead, the police were called on her. She was arrested, and she was eventually returned to her perpetrator. It's these sort of downstream events we hope to prevent through this type of legislation. And with that, Free State Justice does urge a favorable report on House Bill 455. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have unfavorable testimony from Vince McAvoy. Vince McAvoy. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or the witnesses? Thank you very much to bill sponsor and everyone for being here today for House Bill 455. That concludes the hearing. Next, we'll move on to House Bill 444, Delegate Forbes, Maryland Senator Edward J. Casemeyer, College Investment Plan, State Matching Contribution, Age of Account Holder. Delegate Forbes, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chang. Thank you, members of the Appropriations Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Kathy Forbes, and I'm pleased for this opportunity to present to you H Bill 444, a bill that will close a new loophole in the college savings plan, the Save for College program in Maryland. On background, Maryland 529 runs two college savings plan, a prepaid college trust, which essentially lets people buy college tuition today and use at today's rates and use it later, and the college investment plan, which is a more traditional investment plan run by T. Rowe Price. When these programs were introduced, by and large, affluent people were taking advantage of them because they understood the benefits of tax deferred savings and the annual tax credits you get. But lower and more moderate income people weren't opening these accounts. So with the College Affordability Act of 2016, we created this Save for College program. And that's the program that this bill, there's a loophole in that we're aiming to close. The Save for College program is means tested. And so if someone of moderate or low income means opens a 529 and contributes and applies to the Save for College program, the state will then also make a contribution to that 529 plan. And the contribution is done year after year to encourage savings year in, year out, to accomplish that daunting task of saving for college. So 2 years ago, we heard testimony that there was widespread abuse in this program. And so this committee passed Bill HB 1238 last year, and we closed all of the loopholes that we knew about. And by and large, you'll hear testimony from the cash campaign that our efforts were good. We had good results from 1238. But this year, a new loophole has emerged. One of the main provisions of last year's legislation was creating a $9,000 limit of benefits to any account holder, how much they could receive from the Save for College program. So what people have done to avoid that is open custodial accounts with their minor child as the account holder. And this is new this year. I think they've had one before this year, and this year the rate of them went up 800%. So in this scheme, if I can call it that, it's legal, but we're aiming to make it illegal. The account holder is a minor child, the custodial parent, and in most cases they've exceeded their benefits, opens the account and then applies. To make matters worse, some of those children are serving as account holders for other members of their family. As a consequence, there were families with both parents who have received more than $9,000 in benefits from the Save for College program who opened these custodial accounts with the child as the account holder. To be clear, this bill doesn't eliminate custodial accounts from the Maryland 529 plan. It just addresses this new loophole in the Save for College plan. I ask for a favorable report on HB 444. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Forbes. Joining her today, providing favorable testimony, is Robin McKinney with the Cash Campaign of Maryland.
Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to support House Bill 444. This bill will require an account holder to be at least 18 years old for the Save for College State Max program. My name is Robin McKinney. I'm the CEO and co-founder of the Cash Campaign of Maryland. Cash promotes economic advancement for low to moderate income individuals and families in Baltimore and across Maryland. More than half of our tax filers earn less than $20,000, with many earning less than $10,000. Thanks so much to this committee for your leadership last year to close the many loopholes that we had found in the program. But now, unfortunately, we have one more. In this case where folks are using a child to create these custodial accounts, what we're seeing is it's, as Delegate Forbes said, it's not just one person, it's been a huge increase. And what we found out is that there's actually been people calling to find out if this is allowed. And we've seen emails going out primarily to private schools that are walking people step by step about how to actually abuse this loophole. So there is some urgency behind this, that people are starting to mobilize and finding ways to exploit this loophole. So we are once again coming back to you and asking for your help to close it. So with that, we urge a favorable report for House Bill 444.
Thank you very much, Ms. McKinney. Today, we also have Aaron Layton with Maryland 429, who is providing information.
Good afternoon, Vice Chairman Chang and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Aaron Layton, and I'm the Executive Director of Maryland 529. Our agency has the privilege of administering the Save for College State Contribution Program. We're entrusted to oversee eligibility requirements established by the General Assembly, and we regularly track metrics of participation to confirm success of that program and to identify areas that could use additional focus and attention. As Delegate Forbes and Robin have both commented, there have been several significant changes made over the past 2 years in order to maintain the spirit of the program. And namely, that was capping an account holder from receiving more than $9,000. An unexpected outcome of that change has led to an increase in custodial accounts being established and used to apply for the state contribution program. In 2021, there were almost 700 custodial accounts opened. 324 of those were used to apply for the state contribution program. Compare that to 2020, when we had 11 custodial accounts apply for the program, and in 2019, there were 22. These 2021 numbers represent an 800% increase in applications to the program, and ultimately these accounts were awarded over $128,000 in total last year for these accounts. Custodial accounts on their own are open for a variety of reasons and uses. The main difference between a custodial account and a regular account is the age of the account holder. A custodial account has a minor as the account holder, and the adult acts as the custodian of the account on the minor's behalf. There's a direct correlation between many of the account holders who have previously maxed out at the $9,000 cap and these new custodial accounts that are opened. Legislative changes that have been implemented previously, namely limiting up to contributions per beneficiary, will provide a guardrail to prevent the program from seeing a significant fund going to any one account holder or beneficiary. However, if the committee would like to prevent the use of custodial accounts for purposes of the state contribution program, it can be accomplished by adding the requirement that an account holder be at least 18 years or older in order to be eligible for the Safe College State Contribution Program, as is described in HB 444. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or the witnesses? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 444. We'll move on to the last bill of this afternoon. It's House Bill 447, Delegate Smith, Human Service Cash Campaign Annual Appropriation. Delegate Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Delegate Stephanie Smith, and I'm here to present to you House Bill 447, and I also do hope to get your favorable report. House Bill 447 relates to increasing the annual appropriation for the cash campaign. And the cash campaign has definitely been at the forefront of helping some of the most vulnerable Marylanders as we face not only this pandemic, but prior to the pandemic, and will also be here long after the pandemic has concluded. As many of you know, because Maryland has a wealth of workers that have been able to work remotely, this recovery has been felt in a K-shape. There are many people that have not lost income because they've been able to maintain often pretty high paying compensation by working remotely. But there are a cadre of families across the state that have been unable to have that same financial good fortune. And so it was the wisdom of this General Assembly and prior sessions to provide some tax relief and relief to some of these families through increasing the generosity of the earned income tax credit at the state level, as well as providing other opportunities for vulnerable Marylanders to get some relief. So that combination of us being forthright in providing some tax relief opportunities to low-income Marylanders, there's also been an attendant increase in the demand for cash campaigns, free tax preparation services. So the purpose of this increase in the annual appropriation is to ensure that beginning in fiscal year 24, that as they continue to build out their abilities to support Marylanders across the state, and as well as support partners that enable them to provide this free tax preparation assistance to households, we know that in doing so, we actually end up in a better position because we want people to have access to all of the tax deductions that they're eligible for, not only those that were created by the state, but also those that are available to them at a federal level. Because once people have increased access to funds that they were already eligible for, not only does the very modest investment we put in the cash campaign pay back to us as a state in terms of increased economic activity, it also enables these households and families to purchase things that are very much needed for their household, be it clothes, food, medicines, and the like. So I just want to, in conclusion, just lift up that the cash campaign does provide assistance in about 14 to 19 counties that do not have another free tax preparation opportunity of a similar scale available. So they're doing important work in every part of our state, but they do need additional resources to continue to meet the needs of those who are now eligible for increased relief through tax credits, but oftentimes require assistance in being able to ensure that they do not miss those opportunities through the tax preparation and technical assistance provided by the cash campaign and their staff. So I do humbly request that this committee provide a favorable report to House Bill 447, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Delegate Smith. Today we have Robin McKinney with the Cash Campaign of Maryland providing favorable testimony. Ms. McKinney.
Yep. Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to support House Bill 447. Thanks so much to Delegate Smith for your leadership for sponsoring this bill. My name is Robin McKinney, and I'm CEO and co-founder of the Cash Campaign of Maryland. Cash provides economic advancement for low to moderate income individuals and families across the state of Maryland. We serve about 25,000 people annually in non-pandemic times through free tax preparation. In order to qualify for free tax preparation, this is an IRS program called Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. The household needs to earn less than $58,000, but more than half of the people that we serve actually earn less than 20. We have seen incredible demand throughout the pandemic for our services. One, because of the stimulus payments and additional child tax credits that have come out from the federal level, as well as through the expansions that have happened here in Maryland to the earned income tax credit, all of which provide working families with very much needed funds. Last year in Baltimore City alone, we had 60,000 calls for free tax preparation, and we were able to serve 5,800 of them. Even in a good year, we're able to serve about 10,000 households in Baltimore. I mentioned that typically we serve about 25,000 households a year. Last year, we were able to serve only 20% of the demand, whereas in a good year, we're typically getting about half the people that are coming through. Free tax preparation helps families to maximize every single dollar that's coming in through the earned income tax credit. This year, the IRS has granted us $506,500 and requires a 1-to-1 match for these non-federal funds. These funds are used for our services in Baltimore and also support our partners in 19 out of the 24 counties. And we engage over 600 volunteers to support the program. We also know that right now, tax preparation is not just a seasonal activity from January to April. Last year, the tax season was extended into July. This year, the comptroller's already announced that it's going to be into July again. And we actually stayed open until October 29th, trying to help as many people as possible. We also help people that are having compliance issues, getting people who have occupational licenses that may be held up for tax issues. So we are a year-round service. We are trying as hard as we can to meet demand, and we really appreciate any additional support. Right now, we're getting over 4,000 calls a week. So thank you for everyone who's helping to get the word out, and we would appreciate any additional support to our organization to be able to deliver this service. So with that, we urge a favorable report for House Bill 447.
Thank you very much, Ms. McKinney. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or Ms. McKinney? That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 447. Looking forward to everybody being at the subcommittee meetings tomorrow. Thank you everyone, to the sponsors and also to the members and the public for engaging in today's bill hearing. On behalf of the House Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Maggie McIntosh, we'll see you soon. Thanks.